This is the second piece of software that I'm going to be using. It's called Photopea and it's a brilliant piece of software. If you look at this, you'll probably straight away think, hang on, this looks a little bit like Adobe Photoshop. It does. It works in a very similar way to Adobe Photoshop. So as I go through some of these tools, you're going to look and think, oh, you know what? Yeah, this is similar to what we use in school. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on File and then I'm going to go to New. Now, just before I start with this, like I said with the other tutorial, I'm going to ask you to play around with these things. I'm not going to have time to go through every tool. There's just way too many. If you want to do something specific, go on YouTube, have a look at some tutorials. There's loads and loads and loads of different tutorials on here, and I'll try and link to some on Moodle so you can see then how things are laid out. I've chosen a standard width and height here of 1000 by 1000 to make it the same size as the Spark logo, but again, if you wanted to make a wider logo, you'd adjust the width here to be something a little bit bigger. Okay, so I've got 1000 by 1000 and I'm going to click on Create. Looking at the layout of this software, it's obviously fairly similar to Photoshop, so it should be something you're used to. On the right hand side there's a background option, and by default it's put one layer in, which is your background layer, and then you've got other options there for things like brushes, characters, to change fonts and so forth. Right, so we're going to use some of those later on. Hopefully you can make a lot of connections with this software as it's very similar to what we've used in school, but I really want you to play around with this as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click my text, which is on the left hand side. Once I've clicked on the text, I'm going to click and I'm going to put my brand name in, which is Cakes. And click on the tick here on the top, which saves it. Now if I wanted to move this around, you can see as I'm moving it, there's a little red line which comes up. This red line shows a marker, so it shows you where the center of the image is, and obviously then positioning makes it much easier. If you wanted to change the font, again, make sure you're on the text layer. Like with Photoshop, if you click on the text tool, then again you can highlight it and you can change the fonts here. There's a load built in, so I don't think you'll ever get bored. There's something for everyone. So if you wanted to change the font to make it a little bit more standout, or you wanted it to be a bit more curvy, that's totally your choice. Just make sure you choose a font that is readable and is fairly easy to look at. Okay, yeah, that's fine for now. If you want to change the size, you've got a size option, you've got a slider to make it bigger or smaller, and if you wanted to go bigger again, you just change the number manually. You've got positioning options, you've also got the text color. So if I click on the color here, and we'll go for say a dark blue, click OK, click the tick, and then it's changed there for you. You do have warp options as well, so if you wanted to do similar things to Photoshop where you wanted to get it like arced as an example, or you wanted to sort of be like a flag, you've got these different options here and you're a way to go, you can use them. Again, don't forget, click the tick at the top to save everything. If you wanted to add in a color, if I click on Layer, New, and then Layer, you can see now I've got a blank layer here. If I click on my pink bucket tool and change the color, so I'm going to put a lighter blue here. If I click here, you can see it's added this lovely color in here, and if I needed then to see the font, look at the options of the layers. If I just drag it down, bam, what a way to go. Now you can always go back and edit the text at any time. So if I click on my cakes there and think, actually I don't like this anymore, if I click on my text tool here and then highlight it, I can then change the colors again. And if you click on the character options here, you can choose various different options there to make it stand out a little bit more to your heart's content. Once you are happy with everything, obviously don't forget, click the tick on the top and then it'll save it for you. You may think, actually I want a little bit of a gradient in there. But again, this software can do it. Click on the pink bucket tool, click on the gradient option, and then drag your gradient. Now, where does it get this gradient from? Well, if you click on this drop down menu here, you've got some pre-built in settings, but you can see on the bottom here I've got two mixing tabs. So if I click on that and go for something a little bit darker, you can kind of see now how it's getting the design. And you've also got then different options here. So if you wanted to do say a radial design, so have something standing out a little bit more, you can just by clicking, dragging, and you can see as I'm doing this, there's different designs coming up here now, no problem at all. You can also do other things like the diamond designs. So again, play around with this, see what you can do, see what you like. You may think, actually I don't like any of these, and again, you are free to play around and add in your own little design. Okay, now I'm just going to put this back in the center. There we go. So I've got it relatively close to the center. If you need to move it around, if you move your layer, you'll notice that that obviously will move over. But if you wanted to stretch this layer out, if you click on the transform controls on the top, you can then stretch this layer out a little bit to make it fit your design. Now again, my font there now I need to change because the light blue doesn't go with the light white that I've chosen. So again, if I highlight it, go back over here, and I'm going to change it like to say a grey. Great, that's much easier to look at. What happens though if you want to get a little image in or an icon? Well, I don't think there's anything built in, so there's no sort of clip art library built in, so you'd need to go online and have a look for something. If I just go onto Google and look for this one here now, look for cake icon, what I would typically point you towards is something like this website, Flat Icon. It's a brilliant website. There's lots of different vector images on here, so they can be scaled up, and you can obviously edit then ever so slightly if you needed to. One thing to remember though with Flat Icon, most of the things are free. Right, you've got to attribute the author, so if you are going to publish it online, you need to say where you've got it from. If it's anything like this little logo here, this is a premium template, so you won't be able to use those unless you pay for them. Okay, but I'm going to choose one now at random here. I'm going to go with that one there. And what it'll do is it'll show you this, what it looks like, and then it'll show you others then within the same sort of library. And if you scroll down, it'll also show you then any linked options here as well, okay, or similar things. So you can really go through and have a good look at your different designs there. So if we click on this one now, again, random, you can then choose the size. I always try to download in the bigger size because it allows you then to rescale and make it bigger or smaller. But if I download this, free download, make sure if you are publishing it online, you attribute this one here now, which is free pick. So once it's downloaded, by default this has gone into my downloads folder. So what I can do is I can just drag and drop it in, and you can see there now it's worked, and I can position it in here. You may say, I want to change this ever so slightly, so I want to get some form of glow around this. That's fine. Click on the tick, and then on this layer, right click and go to blending options. Now with the blending options, what we can do is we can put glows on it. So if I click on my outer glow here, you can see it's put a very small glow around the outside. So what we're going to do is we're going to increase the size of this and the spread of it. Okay, now as you increase the size, it'll get a little bit more hazy maybe. So again, you can play around with these little layers, so these little levers, and you can then choose the different settings that you want. You can also then change the range and the contour of it and how much jitter you've got on it as well. Okay, now you may think, actually I don't like having a light color there. If you click on the gradient color, you can then choose it to whatever you want, but don't forget a glow is supposed to be quite light to stand out. You can also choose any of these other options. You can put strokes on, which will put a line going around it. You can put inner shadows. You can have a play with these different settings. As long as you click OK to save it, you're away to go. Now again, we're going to go back and we're going to edit our fonts again because I'm not happy with this. So I'm going to click on the Cakes logo, the fonts there, and I'm going to choose a completely different font just to show you how versatile this is, and you can keep on changing the fonts until you are really happy with the design that you like. Okay, so I'm just going to go with another one now, just at random. If you wanted to choose a specific colour, normally in Photoshop you've got a colour picker, which you have got here. So if I click on here, look, after my colour picker, it'll pick the exact shade that I've chosen here, so you can have it direct on here as well. Okay, and again, if you needed to, you can change it by just going back here and then changing the colours and so forth. Right, very nice, very easy. What if you wanted to get any other styles on here? Well, you can. You've got other options. You can blur, you can remove, you've got brush tools here. So if you click on the brush option and then I click on my brushes here, you've got various different styles that you put. I've got a load of different styles here. Just before I add a brush in, though, I'm going to add a new layer. Okay, because I like to build everything up on my layers so everything is separate, and I'm just going to rename this layer by double clicking on it, and then I'm going to call it brush. Okay, now once you've clicked on that and pressed enter, what you can do is you can add a brush tool, or brush stroke rather, to the bottom. So if I click on the brush and I'm going to go for something like that there, that would be quite nice, I think. Yeah, we'll go for that. It's going to pick the color up from here, so you might need to change this color. So if I'm going to go maybe a little bit darker and click OK, then what I can do is I can click and I can highlight like so. Okay, if you need to change this again, if you click on the move tool, you can move this around, and then if we needed to stretch it out, maybe you can click on the stretch and you can put that like so. Once you're happy with your design and you think, yeah, I like that. Once you're happy with your design, what you can do is you can save it. So if you go edit and then save as PSD, this actually saves it as a Photoshop file for you, right? But what you'll also need to do is go to export and then export it as PNG. Now it's going to show you a few options. Leave the quality at 100% for now, that's fine. And if you move around, you can just make sure everything is there, and then click on save, and then it downloads it there for you. The reason you'll need this file, the PSD file, is if you need to re-edit anything, right? So I'm going to show you now separately how to reopen this file once you've downloaded it. When you want to reopen a file that you've already made, as I told you earlier, you need to make sure it's saved as PSD, really. If you click on File and then go to Open, and then I'm going to make sure I'm in my Downloads folder here, and then I'm going to select this one here, New Project PSD, and you can see there now that's opened, and I can change anything by clicking on the various different layers. Okay, I don't mind what software you use, whether you use this, whether you use Adobe Spark. What I would tell you though is try to use both pieces of software. Try to use both of them because they've both got really good features built in, and when you're back in school you are going to be using a little bit of Photoshop with us, so you can essentially learn how to use this software, and then the tools and skills will obviously just move over with you. Once you've done, don't forget, please make sure you are putting the work into your pupil booklet, and once you've developed your 3 logo designs, further develop it until then you hit your final logo. Okay, don't forget to submit everything back to Moodle, and if you've got any questions, please send me a little message.